Hello everybody! Are you tired of your enclosures looking like this? Big squares on a flat landscape? Well, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how to make some different types of enclosure and certainly use the barriers in different ways. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is just using the terrain to your advantage. So this particular enclosure is a tortoise enclosure, but because it's quite steep on the sides, the tortoises can't climb up there. There is a fence on the top, but that's only there as a nod to the people. You wouldn't want the people standing right on the edge or falling in, so that's to keep them back from the side. But the tortoise certainly can't get out of the enclosure through this bit because of the terrain. I've got another example of that just across the pathway. I've got some cheetah in here. It's the same sort of thing. There's a drop down into the enclosure, and the barrier is purely there again for aesthetic purposes. You don't actually need it, but you wouldn't want people standing on the edge and trying to throw their chicken sandwiches at the cheetahs. On this one, I've used some rocks to make it look as though it's a rocky outcrop along the edge, and it certainly works to keep the cheetahs out. Another thing I've used is water. So I sometimes use water as a barrier. Some animals, like the cheetah, can't swim, and therefore a large river along one side or a deep enough piece of water will stop them escaping out of the back. So they can certainly get to the water here and here, although it might be a little bit steep there, but I know that the water acts as a barrier along there. But what about animals that swim? Well, this is a swimming cheetah. This is a Nile monitor in its enclosure, and what we've used up here are logs to block the actual river, to stop them getting out into the other enclosures up this way. And it looks fairly naturalistic, and you can certainly use this technique with either rocks or logs, as I have done there. I've got another example of using scenery to block escape, and it's this one, which is a buffalo enclosure, where all I've done is I've placed piles into the ground, and it just looks like a barrier, and certainly these guys can't get out through that. There's no actual barrier there apart from those logs. Well, there's a null barrier, but we'll come on to that in a moment. The other thing that you can use is the scenery itself. So there's a couple of bits you can do. If you want, you can use buildings as part of the barrier. So by all means, put your staff buildings. These are staff buildings here, and use those as part of the barrier. I've utilised this as part of staff buildings and animal house, so it all looks like one building. But all it does is it blocks the animals off from getting out in that direction. I've also used foliage down here. Foliage works very well, especially things like the elephant grass. The rocks, of course, used to great effect. Certainly you can get some great effects like this. If you want to put a few bushes and vines and things on, you can get some great effects for the front of your enclosures. So that's it. So let's have a look at building an enclosure that uses maybe a null barrier. So how would you go about using a null barrier? So null barriers, all they are is an invisible wall. So if you build your normal walls go like this, and they're great, and they keep the animal enclosed, which is fine. However, I don't like the walls very much. So there's different things you can do. You can hide the walls. You can hide a normal wall with rocks, as I have done with this one that I've just shown you. But what you could do instead is use an invisible barrier. So for a null barrier, we can just build it like a normal barrier. The beauty of a null barrier as well is it can go over your path. Okay. So you don't have any issues with the path coming right up to the edge of the enclosure as you do with any other barrier. So with any other barrier, there is a distance that you can go, and it usually leaves a little gap, and we don't like the little gaps, do we? We don't want those. So the closest you can get leaves a little bit at the edge there, which isn't great. You can of course hide that with curbing or something like that, as I have done on my cheetah enclosure, my chimpanzee. That's twice I've said cheetah instead of another animal. So on this particular one, I've got a curbing on the edge, so the pathway runs a little bit closer than you can see. It runs to about here. In fact, I'll get rid of one of these for you. You can see where it goes. There you go. So that's as far as the pathway runs. And I've just hidden it with some fancy pieces so it looks nice. And then again, a decorative barrier because the chimpanzee can't get across the water. So, what else can you do with your null barrier? You can hide your null barriers in walls, of course, as I'm going to do now. So let's just get rid of that. Let's just build barriers again. And let's just go back onto this null barrier. So what we can do with the null barrier is hide it into the rockwork like that. And I'm just doing this very quickly to give you an idea. And as I said, you can go over the walkway fine. The one problem with that is that any trees or bushes that you include, so these are inside of the enclosure, the animals that you put in there might not like this particular bush or tree or whatever it is you've put in there. So we've got a null barrier going pretty much around the enclosure. Part of it's hidden by rocks. That's one technique of using a null barrier, and I quite like using these. You can hide the fence in there as well if you want, so that nobody can see it. So at the front of the enclosure we can use either a drop in height, like this, so a simple drop in height will work wonders, and certainly most animals won't be able to get up that sort of gradient there. There will be a few that can. For the others you could always put some water in like that, and a lot of them, if they can't swim, they won't be able to get out there anyway. Okay, just be aware that some animals that do swim can probably climb out there. They can't climb out like that, but if there's water in it they may be able to. You can make it lower like that, and then any swimming creatures won't be able to get out through there. So that looks okay to me. That looks like a fairly secure bit. I don't think anybody's going to get out of there. Now I've got a bit of null barrier here that's just exposed. Now I could hide that. So I could hide it in the scenery by moving it behind some panels or something, or behind the rocks, or I could stop the animals getting to it by putting down some other rocks. So if I put in some desert rocks, for example, that might stop them from getting over in that direction. Certainly it's a good way of hiding the edges of your water as well. So there you go. So all these bits where the blue are exposed, like here, and there's a good chance an animal will be able to walk through that, through the barrier anyway. Good. That's pretty much secure all the way around the back. What about this end? Well, we've got our water there. What about here? Well, I think what we're going to do here is do something similar to I did over there with the rock work. So let's put some rocks in on this one. So if we make it look a little bit more like rocks, let's put something in like that. So the advantage of using things like this is that you can edge over the pathway. You don't get that little marking line along the path where the barrier goes to, and you can actually encroach slightly on the pathway, which is always good. I'm not that sure about that one. And what I tend to do is find a couple of big rocks to edge my windows. So like that, I've got 2 big rocks there. And let's use something like this and this. You can, of course, spin them round and things like that. We don't want them all looking the same, do we? We want different views like that. So what do we do with our barrier now? So our barrier currently runs over here. Let's put it back to running along the edge-ish. All right, we've got that there. Let's tidy it all up a little bit, like that there. This one can come into here, and what I might do is put another section in there. Let's just put that in. Yeah, and I just want to move that down. So that bit is going to be glass. We're going to put glass in there. We're going to put glass in this bit. So again, I want it to look nice. Let's just move this. There we are. So we're going to now put some big windows in there. So we do that by selecting the pane that we're going to do, and we're going to put some glass in. Just as simple as not that, because it didn't like it. Alright, let's see if it'll do it with this one. Yeah, it did it with that one. If you do have problems putting glass in or anything like that, just drag the panel back out so we can see it all. Get it back out here. This is our panel. We want to make this into glass. Yeah, it's because of the pathway. It's because of the pathway. Null barriers are great. All the other barriers are awful. So now we're going to have to hide this in the rockwork as best we can. So it's trying to go over the path, which is what it doesn't like. So I think what we might do is change where this goes so that it looks better. I'm going to put that there. I'm going to put that in there. And again, because we're actually putting a physical barrier in, like a glass panel, you do get that gap at the bottom. But we can hide that with a rock or something like that. I want some rocks or something, and I am just rushing through this. We want a big rock here, don't we? There we are. It looks lovely. Look at you. Great stuff. I don't know how you want your barrier there. We certainly want to put something in here, or else we might end up with something trying to wander out of its own volition. Yeah, watch that. You catch your cardie on it as you walk past. Good. So we've got our water barrier over there. We've got our rock and glass panels here. We just need to fill this up a little bit with some rock. Make it look... Oh, look, that looks interesting, doesn't it? Should we get that across the top? And we're going to need to put something in there. We could always put some nature in there. We could do that. And again, you might want to check what your animals like and don't like before you start putting these in, because if I put this in like this, it's half in the enclosure and half out, and therefore the animal will regard that as part of the enclosure. Okay, it'll say, "Oh, I don't like that type of plant. Thank you very much." So what about an entry to this place? I have already a door over here that I can maybe use. I don't know what I did then, but let's Control and Z it. Thank you. And we're going to put a door in here somewhere. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to build the door out here. Oh, you don't like that? It's too short a panel, is it? Yeah, okay, that's fine. Edit barrier. We'll put a door in. Yeah, you're not going to go in there, are you? There it is. That's what we want. just connecting up the barriers at the back. So we do have one full enclosure there. And let's see if we can now put that door back in. So I am sort of rushing through this a little bit. I mean, I've not lined that up very well at all. But I do want to just get onto the rest of the build for you. So there we go. So that's our staff entrance, like that. Staff entrance. This can be the sleeping area for the animals. And pretty much the rest of the barrier is okay, apart from this bit. So we'll be able to just wander out here, our lovely animals. So we might want to just put something along the back of this. So again, you can either drop it down so they can't jump up that high, or you can extend the water around the back of this, or you can put some rocks or something in. You may even just want to put a little bit of fence in, just so that it looks like some keepers have come around and put a bit of fence in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the barrier to that bit. We're going to actually have the barrier running around there, and I'm going to make it into a log barrier. These panels are too long. Let's make these smaller, like a 4 meter or something, and we're going to go like this around here. Now what you do is you would check what barriers your animals can climb over and which they can't, and that sort of thing, before you actually did any of this. I've literally just started building this as a project to show you. Let's just get these changed over. Beautiful. So now we have our little garden that we can still see. I don't think the animals can get through there. Not that I know which animals are going in here yet. What animals should we put in there? I'm wondering what's going to be able to climb out if we have water there. I wonder if I could get a little bear or something in there. Should we try a bear of some sort? Although it is supposed to be Africa, this. We really want something African. I'll put the bears in now, and then what we can do is I'll move them to somewhere else in the zoo later on. How about a Formosan black bear? How about you? Should we have one of you? Now what it's going to say is non-climbable, climb-proof, which is no good because I've got wooden log fences, so that's maybe not the best thing. Pangolin. I want something really that'll swim. We could get some warthogs in. Warthogs would be great. So just give me a minute while I get some warthogs and I'll come back to you. Well, there we go. I've just called for the warthogs. We've got 4 female and 1 male, and they're going to come in here, and they're going to say, we don't like this tree, we don't like those trees, we don't like that elephant grass. Can you move them all? But it'll give me a chance to see where the animals can escape from, and hopefully it'll be nowhere, and my work here will be done. I'm not going to show you the rest of the enclosure. It will be part of a different video. I will be tidying it all up, putting a few little barriers in, and also making these look a little bit nicer. Put some logs across them so it looks as though they're actually either part of the rock work, or they've got logs across the top so it looks like a proper fence. And I think those are my warthogs. I think they're carrying warthogs through the park. So these guys are going to turn right. Beautiful. And they will go to the bit over here. So first thing to do, pause the game, press H, and then select habitat, and let's see where they can get out. So I've got no red warnings anywhere down here. No red warnings. None of that. There's nothing. They can't get out anywhere. They can even get up onto the rocks up here. I'm a little bit concerned about that, but that's all fine. They can get all around there, and there are no warnings on any of it. It doesn't look as though they can get out any part of my enclosure. I'm quite pleased with that. So there you go. All you need to do now is make sure they're happy. So it's making the enclosure look nice. Put some trees in, get some bedding in there, get some things for them to play with. Maybe change the terrain a little bit so it's a bit more interesting. But certainly just making the guys happy. Well, what I've shown you is a technique of using plants to hide a barrier, using rocks to hide a barrier, using pieces of glass like that are just a one-off piece of glass when the rest of it is null barrier, just so that your visitors can get a view into an enclosure or of a particularly nice bit of the enclosure. We've got proper fencing, and we've also used water as a barrier, but also the height of the land as well is a barrier, so rocks as well. And what you'll see from this enclosure is I have got a tiny amount of barrier. That's it. That's the only bit of barrier stopping the animals getting out. There's none of the old square enclosures, none of that. And you also see that my enclosure is nowhere near square. It's a little bit rectangular, but it sort of goes around the various paths and things. And I think it's a lot more interesting to look at. Now, I have rushed through that. It's not something that I would normally just do. I will take some time now to make the enclosure look a lot nicer, as I do with all my other enclosures. And but hopefully you've learned a little bit about barriers and how to hide things, so you don't have to have barriers in your park. And that's it, really. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up for the video. If you like the channel, please subscribe. It's free to subscribe, and you get 2 Planet Zoo videos per week. And that's it. My name is Backblast. I'll catch you next time, and thanks for watching, guys.